It's the Two Strange Podcast.
Okay, and we are live on air.
We're back, baby.
That's right. Oh, I've got a special announcement.
Hate these because you never brief me about what you're about to
you
say.
absolutely love this one.
Go on.
Happy birthday
no.
to
Cut.
you. Happy birthday to Tom.
How long are we going to let this ride?
Happy birthday, dear Thomas. Happy birthday to you.
Every octave was hit there.
Yes.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
All six? Is there six?
Yeah, I guess so. For he's a jolly... Oh, fuck off, mate. You're not having two. You're not having two. You're not worth it, mate. You're not worth it.
That's how I felt on my birthday.
How old are you?
Let's. Well, what's the rule? You say your age and then you subtract by 3, or is that just women you've slept with?
I can't remember my age. I know I'm in my 30s, my late 30s.
I'm 32.
32.
32 young.
I remember that.
Yeah. You're like 4 to 5 years older than me. Why are you acting
but
like this?
it feels like a generational gap. Yeah,
Well, yeah. No, I mean, you're a millennial, right?
I am. Yes.
You're the old fogey millennial. I feel like I was the cut-off of that.
No,
Were you born in the 80s?
I'm very trendy. I'm very with the times.
Were you born in the 80s?
I'm more Gen X than Gen X. Okay.
Were you born in the 80s?
I was born in the 80s.
Yeah, no,
Mid-80s.
You're not one of us, mate.
1986, baby.
I was a child at the turn of the millennium.
Yeah.
Not a teenager.
Yeah. Well,
So-
you know, and that comes through in your lack of maturity, I think. You big poo-poo stink face.
Yeah. Because what I would say would be, fuck off.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm older than you and wiser.
Well,
One
that's
of the-
probably true.
One of the things that you'll learn, the older you get, the less
Okay,
of
go
a
on.
fuck you give.
There's lots of F words today, isn't there? It was C words last week. It's F words this week.
Yeah, we like Sesame Street, but for
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah. Well, you know, duality and gender, you got to put a fuck in there, because otherwise, how are you being made?
Oh, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
all about interconnectivity here.
Interconnectivity, and he's segued straight into what we're talking about, guys. Take it away, Tom. Go on.
Like an absolute, God, I am. Right, so today we are going to look at the duality. So going off the back of men, we talked a lot about gender representation and toxic masculinity and this idea. We didn't overly talk about femininity. It was more about the masculine viewpoint, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So today we're just going to be looking at different types of duality and this idea of gender representation.
Yeah.
And I personally have done some research, and I just wanted to kick us off today, actually.
Yeah.
Because while doing the research for this, I came across something quite interesting. At least,
Is it more dildos? More dildo
no,
talk?
I looked for sex related stuff, but funnily enough, there wasn't any.
Yeah.
And you'd think with gender representation it'd be filled with it, but I looked at masculine archetypes, right, and feminine. So types of masculinity and types of femininity, and I found this super interesting because I found quite a lot that there was 4 main masculine types, 4 modern main masculine types. I'm just going to read them out to you.
Okay.
So there's hegemonic masculinity, so the dominant and idealist form of masculinity. Then there's subordinate masculinity that doesn't fit the hegemonic ideal that we often propagate.
Can you say that word again? Is it subordinate?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Carry on.
Complicit masculinity, and also a side note, I butcher everything. I'm Northern. It's
fine.
It's my charm.
That's fine. Hegemonic northerner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So complicit masculinity, these men benefit from existing patriarchal systems and without actively challenging it.
Yeah,
Okay. And then marginalized masculinity. So it includes men who are excluded from the hegemonic ideal that we discussed earlier. So there are 4 types, right? And most men or masculine presenting people will fit somewhere within those 4 types.
Okay.
I thought, okay, that makes sense to my brain. I then did the same with femininity.
Can you stop for a minute? Because we're 2 strange men, okay?
Yeah.
Are we 2 strange hegemonic men, subordinate men, complicit men?
Do you feel like you're a
I wanna
dominant,
know-
idolized form of masculinity?
I want to know you. What do you feel that you fit within? All of this is bollocks at the end.
I'm but a man. A lot of singing today. I don't know. Maybe complicit masculinity.
Okay. Explain that again.
So these men benefit from existing patriarchal systems without actively challenging it.
Yeah, I'd say.
And they may not fully embody the characteristics of hegemonic masculinity.
Yeah.
So, you know, for example, I like a lot of masculine type activities.
Yeah.
My kind of, you know, the industry was quite masculine. The industries that I'm in, quite a lot of them are masculine based. However,
Didn't you study musical theatre?
Yeah, shut up about that.
Listen to a word he's saying, folks.
I mean, the podcast sector's quite male dominated, right?
Yeah.
I would argue that.
Yeah.
At least the popular ones.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
However, I sometimes like a bit of feminine activity. And what I mean by that, because I need to clarify that very quickly, is I love going to a spa, putting some comfy slippers on, getting a robe, putting my hair in a towel. Love that. It's very relaxing to me. Not necessarily a masculine activity, though.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's good to have some self-care. That's a modern ideal, though, isn't it? And I think that should be something that transcends genders and all of that stuff. And I think today, based on my research, we're going to be just talking about the transcendence of genders and really just thinking about there's a male and there's a female in all of us, really. And it's almost like a spectrum, despite the dangly bits on you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think
transcends
that's fair.
biology, right?
Yeah. And what's interesting is when we look at the research we've done, we're seeing that this is a tradition that is at least, you know, separate to the norm Western ideologies that we've had through history and stuff like that. It's kind of like this idea that now seems so radical with transgenderism and other such things like that. Like, it's the norm. It's kind of normal for these other societies to have that, you know?
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back because, how do you... Because you've mentioned that there's these different types and there's the idealized version of man. I'm definitely that. But
100%. Yeah, I'm literally looking at your ripped biceps right now while you're like.
Stop looking at my ripped biceps. How dare you?
You're chugging down like a Monster Energy, and you've got your cap on backwards.
Excuse me, this is not like idealized male. Like the idea that you are I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing in itself, isn't it? Just the idea of what we are considering an idealized male type. You know, is that someone who's chugging energy drinks and streaming on games and stuff like that? Hell no. No, it's not. I mean, is that more like the type of thing that you get if you're looking and seeing people with their self-help, fitness guru, all of that sort of stuff online, trying to be the best man or whatever?
Well, it's male dominance, isn't it? It's power.
Yeah,
it's power, but it's also. I mean, when I think of the archetypal man that quite often we are told to strive to be, right?
Yeah,
it's somebody that can protect people from physical and mental threats.
Yeah,
but it's also someone that can be soft with the people that they care about, but not too soft.
Yeah,
you know, just gentle.
Yeah,
but fierce.
Yeah, I've got a body type, right, that just cannot maintain muscle mass, right? It's just, I mean, you look at everyone on my dad's side, they're all just skinny buggers, all right? I mean, for the most part, they can handle themselves, etc., but there's not enough power behind their punches and stuff like that. And I've kind of learnt that through my own sort of forays into physical activity and trying to build muscle and stuff like that. And I just decided, to be honest with you, I'll get into it so that I can potentially protect my family, you know? I want to always be able to easily lift up my kids even if they're adults and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But that sort of thing. But generally what it's tends to become, as I've kind of relaxed into that, is what I do for fitness now is mainly jogging. So what am I saying? It's I'm not there to protect my family, I'm practicing to be able to run away.
If I can't save them, I might as well save myself.
That's me all over. Yeah. Yeah. If both of us are running away from a lion, mate, I'm kicking your feet from under you.
I'm not being funny. I had this conversation with some other people about a zombie apocalypse, right? And, you know, who would do the pushing.
Yeah.
I'll be your sacrificial Jesus, right? The people of this podcast may not know. I have a leg condition.
Okay.
Right? This slows me down.
Yeah.
it's not fair for me to push. I'm gonna be eaten the next in the next 2 minutes. I might as well just go out with a bag,
barbecue sauce yourself up.
Just be like, let's go, guys, off you pop. I've got you, baby, and just let the zombies chow down. Maybe even say this is a really good part of me. Really distract them, and then my friends can get away. Because otherwise.
Or what we could do is we could use you as some sort do you know how in sting operations and stuff, or not sting operations, like a heist movie or something, they leave some food for a dog and then that's a distraction.
Yes.
So what we'd do is we'd take your legs off, okay, and then you can live on my back as a little backpack.
Okay.
Yeah? And we've eaten your legs, or we've given those to zombies.
Yeah, I'm curious why the first one was we've eaten your legs rather than the legs go to the zombies.
I tried to give it to the zombies, but it just looked so delicious.
Right.
Yeah, very tender.
You leave my bloody legs alone. When I come into shots in a couple of months' time, if you're looking at my hams, it's game over, my friend.
Well, stop slathering them in barbecue sauce. That's all I asked. Yeah.
To be fair, HR said the same, so it's consistent feedback I'm getting.
Okay, so have you looked mainly at men?
Well, I then flipped it, right, and said, okay, so they're the types of masculinity, and here's where my research gets interesting. So we have those 4 types, and then when you look at types of femininity, it then broadens out, but it gets a bit fancy here, Carl.
Okay.
They start to go into archetypes, and they're given really cool names.
Okay.
So we had things like, hegemonic masculinity, complicit masculinity, quite clear-cut kind of academic language, right?
Yeah.
Are you ready for the types of femininity?
Okay. I can be ready.
Hold on to that hat you're not wearing, okay? So, the maiden.
The maiden.
The maiden. So these are tarot card names, right?
But also they kind of resemble the typical Jungian archetype.
Yes.
Things. Yeah.
So we've got the maiden.
Yeah.
Represents innocence, youth, and the potential for growth and exploration. We've got the mother, which you could probably quite easily infer. Nurturing, caregiving, ability to create and protect.
Yep.
We then have the lover. Focus on sensuality, passion, the ability to deeply connect with others, a very social archetype. The queen, power, leadership, ability to make decisions.
God save her.
God save her, absolutely. The wise woman.
Yeah.
Symbolizes wisdom, knowledge, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The huntress. This is the one I liked. The huntress. What do you think the huntress represents?
So I mean, when we think of mythology and stuff like that, you've got not Hera, that's the mother sort of character, isn't it? But you've got that other one, I can't remember her name, but she's literally the woman of the hunt, etc. To provide. Yep. A provider.
All I can think is Aphrodite, but I know that's not her.
Yeah, she's the goddess of beauty and stuff. She'd be more like the maiden. Yeah. It's a shame that I've missed the name. It doesn't matter. You've got that sort of character. So that is someone. So I mean, at the heart of all of this is the idea of prehistoric society had these sort of more egalitarian societies where we had hunters and gatherers and stuff like that. And I would literally say that is someone who's, a huntress could easily be someone an archetype for someone who is, say maybe a single parent who's trying to make it work and everything like that in a modern sort of situation. Yeah. Erin Brockovich is a huntress.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that fits though with the mother.
Okay.
Whereas the huntress is about independent strength and the ability to pursue one's own goals.
Okay. Yeah, but if you think about a story of a single parent who's making it work through struggle, you've got that strive for independence, okay? And you're going to have that. You're going to have those issues in front of someone that gives them that fire that you would associate with the idea of a huntress,
And here's my issue with archetypes, right? most women I know are several of those things. We're
Yeah.
much more complex. The last one,
Well,
which I think
the
is
thing is,
interesting.
I don't like this comparison you're making, because you're saying, oh, these male ones are all very scientific, and then the female ones are all very like wishy-washy and attached to like Joseph Campbell's power of myth stuff, and Jung's archetypes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Are they from the same resource?
There was no similar thing for masculinity.
I think the thing is though, like, I think there is. Do you know what I mean? But the problem is that it will fit within the patriarchal norms, you know, that we're meant to be avoiding in modern society and stuff like that. The hero who saves the maiden. Yeah. Oh, you've got a maiden there. Okay. Who's saving that person?
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not talking about that.
Yeah, but I think that it's interesting though, isn't it? The discourse, whether that exists, what is being presented,
Yeah.
is this idea of very scientific for one, and very kind of almost, wishy-washy, I guess. Like
Yeah.
you said.
But like, look, at the end of the day, like, we've got all of these wonderful, like, fictional things that fit men. But you've said a wise woman. Are there no wise men? How dare you? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's a
Yeah.
shame that there's not that similarity that they're putting forward in whatever website that you're looking at.
Yeah.
But like, you know, at the end of the day, if you've got a list of all of those like female archetypes, you've got male equivalent of those archetypes as well. You've got the hunter, you've got, you know, the wise man, you've got the king. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're all there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they don't exist.
Yeah.
I'm saying what is interesting is what we decide to put prevalence on.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, as you said, I can almost guarantee there are hundreds of different archetypes for male
Yeah.
and masculine type roles. But it's interesting that when you look at these, I'm always interested in the type of research that gets pushed to the surface, because there's
Yeah.
thousands of different research points and books. I'm always interested in what rises to the top, because I think that says more about us,
Yeah.
what research we put prevalence in, based on what we decide to leave on the cutting room floor. And I think that's an interesting psychological thing, what we decide to give power to.
Yeah, precedence to, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, alongside that, like, in my research, I wanted to look at, like, the philosophical and the mythological approach to the idea of a duality between men and women, because that's what I kind of felt like came through at the end with Men, you know, the film. And what I ended up getting is a lot about essentially like gender studies and the idea of transgenderism and stuff like that, and the fluidity of gender. And that's what we're pushing to the surface, isn't it? At the heart of it, you know? And I think that's also, it's a response to lots and lots of like feminist pushing against the patriarchy as well. You know, this idea of like gendered norms and stuff like that. It's, by the time you get into, I think it's like third wave feminism, it's introducing, you know, intersectionality, I guess. So like maybe it's fourth wave feminism, where you get the idea of like, well, you know, what makes a female and all of that sort of stuff, you know? Yeah. So we're talking about archetypes an awful lot.
Yeah.
Hopefully the listeners know what we're talking about with archetypes. Just a quick sort of like summary. How would you describe what an archetype is?
So it's a set kind of characteristics that falls into something. So almost like a
Legends,
stereotype, right?
Yeah. So like, you know, we see in our real lives things that mimic what we read about, what we know to be like expected sort of like cultural elements and things like that. Okay. So when you look and you see like, you know, obviously that bad Snow White film is out at the moment. Yeah.
Not
That-
seen it yet.
Yeah,
Reserve
well,
judgment.
Yeah. So you've got lots of archetypes there. You've got like a domineering sort of like female character,
Yeah.
and then you've got a soft, innocent character. Okay. And then in your lives, when you're looking and you're seeing how like narratives within your life play out, you'll be able to see those elements come through. And you've seen them in Snow White, you've seen them in this, you've seen them in that. You know, the Snow White is very similar to like the Greek goddess Hera, for example, you know, in a number of different ways, that evil queen sort of environment, you know. And then obviously you've got Persephone, who is someone who literally falls asleep, you know. And that is the archetypal story of Snow White, isn't it? And there's most probably going to have been stories that came out before then of a maiden that falls asleep, etc. And so what you've got is this, you've got this idea of like structuralism, which is another term that kind of explains this whole idea of like stories come from other stories, come from other stories, come from other stories. And what we take out from that is those character archetypal roles that make up society and still do to this day.
So where would you fit yourself if you had to give yourself an archetype? Where would you go with that?
I mean, like, it's like the thing is, like, it's a matter of the individual situations that you have. So I've felt that I have been, say for example, at any point in time, if I am moving into a new job role, for example, okay, and it's scary, etc. You could, or like, an interview or something like that, you could essentially say that you are, like the George and the Dragon type character. You're the character who's going to be going off and vanquishing that beast, and you're going to take the spoils home with you to your family, but in a completely different scenario, you're someone else entirely. There are days, like for example on Christmas, where I feel like a king. Do you know what I mean? So it's all different ways in which you take those archetypal things, and then it creates your psychological profile.
So your situation where you are in your story,
yeah,
kind of solidifies where you are, like what archetype and your role within that.
Absolutely. You said that with a lot of sort of like purpose. You wanted me to say something specific. Do you have a specific thing that you could say that you are?
I wish I'd like planned that and just been like, well, and then told you like every archetype I've ever been. But no, there was no hidden meaning.
Yeah.
There.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if you had a strong feeling, if you wanted to convey a certain level of, I don't know, gravitas or masculinity within kind of your perception. Because you can make to the listeners, you could be whoever you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we do. I think we model ourselves after archetypes. And I'll give you an example here, okay? You are sitting there in front of me wearing a Wolverine T-shirt.
Here we bloody go. Go on.
And look, you're short. You're a short man.
That's not true.
You're not 6 foot, mate. All right.
I'm 6'3".
Fuck off. Right? You're somewhat like beardy, and dishevelled, like the man.
I'm petite. I look like a tramp. Yes. Carry on.
And you've got the claws.
Oh
as well.
my god! I knew this is where this was going.
But also, you are, I think, just from a personality side of things, like, you're not an angry man, but you are also, you exude some personalities. If you're in a classroom, okay, with students, you have a tendency to be a certain way.
Yes, I agree.
And look, I mean, like, I'm not gonna like put on air like some of the things that you've said to students, but like, you could end those sentences with bub at the end and it would make perfect sense. All right. So look,
They need to respect me and fear me in equal measure.
So look, all I'm saying is, like, you have in some way, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you've modeled yourself over one of your favorite characters.
And I'm so on the nose about it, I'll wear him on my chest.
And we do that, like I've got my hair in a bun, and I'll often walk around with a picture of a samurai, and I've had people in the street, like, blare out of their cars saying, like, yeah, you're a samurai, we get it. Like, in my youth, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's,
oh, really?
Yeah. Because I used to wear my hair a certain way. It's like, I wasn't thinking at the time that I was trying to look like a samurai. Do you know what I mean? But like,
is that now the intention?
No, it's not. But like, I am totally aware. If I have my hair down, though, I look like the spitting image of Jesus Christ. All right?
I mean, you don't, but okay.
do.
You
I
don't.
fucking do.
You
Fuck
really don't.
Yeah, that's just what I see. But like, I'm not.
I see myself as a messiah.
I'm not making an effort. It's just that even on a aesthetic level, we make these like subconscious decisions. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so just bleeding on from archetypes and the idea of an archetype, now that we're fully understanding of that, is the idea of an anima and animus. Okay?
Okay.
So you've got Freud and you've got Carl Jung as well. They are very prominent psychologists that even to this day, I think more so, and I could be wrong, okay, but I think more so the ideas of Carl Jung have had more staying power.
I agree.
I think Freud had the louder voice, and, you know, Carl Jung was more of a, additional voice alongside that at the time. But I feel like, for example, we have, like, you know, things like the Myers-Briggs index and stuff like that. You know, you can do personality tests and stuff like that are quite deeply respected and are done within, like, job roles and stuff like that lean into all these theories of, like, archetypes and stuff like that. And it just generally, it's something more to go for. And also, if you're interested in film creation and like story making and other such things, which I assume you are if you're listening to this, because that's essentially what we end up doing or talking about. Yeah, Jung is really great for that. Okay, so that I would definitely recommend looking into the theories of Carl Jung. But anyway, now, he had this theory about he posited that there is an archetypal male and female, and I'm going to put it in bunny ears brackets here. There is a female and male soul within each of us. Yeah, and when he uses that term, he's not talking about like an ethereal being that's going to leave your body when you die, but like, you know, a part of you. You know, essentially, you know, I'm really, really making that really basic. But yeah, an unconscious feminine and masculine aspect of a person's psyche. Yeah. And if you, essentially, his thoughts were that if you were to embrace that, then you're going to have a better outlook on life and you're going to be more self-aware. If you're just like, I'm a man, manly man. You know, I'm not in touch with my feelings. That's what women do. You're going to have a bad time. And you might end up, do you know what I mean? Like killing yourself and stuff like that. Yeah. Just think about the narrative that we've had with men and like the football reference here. Rio Ferdinand, for example, went on this big campaign like after his career about like raising awareness for men talking about their feelings and stuff like that. You know, and which was obviously brave to do, you know. And another comedian that I really like who has done this as well, tried to raise awareness of this, of the female aspects of you, I think was Robert Webb. Mitchell and Webb, you know, David Mitchell, Robert Webb. I think he wrote a book about, you know, like getting in touch with your feelings and stuff like that. And it seems quite obvious now. But at the time when you had Carl Jung, like looking at like these like ancient practices, I guess that we'll talk about a little bit later, and trying to define that idea of like everyone having that duality, that anima and the animus, you know, there would have been a lot of people like, what? Denying me my hetero gender normative male characteristics, that's what makes me, and there's nothing else to me. How dare you? I'm not gay.
And that's why I think we made that comparison between, you know, Freud and Jung. And I just think at the time, if you look at a lot of Freud's work, it is separating people's actions. It's like, you do this because of this.
Yeah.
You feel this kind of way sexually about your mother because of this. It's nothing to do with you, mate. It's all here. Whereas with Jung, you kind of have to take a bit of accountability.
Yeah.
So I think that's why Freud had more of a platform.
Yeah.
And slowly, as we've understood kind of the concept of like gender archetypes, societal norms.
Yeah.
Jung has stayed, whereas some of Freud's work has started to kind of underpin and we've gone past it.
Yeah.
Whereas Jung's feels more like a framework.
And yeah, I mean, that idea of societal norms and the idea that, you are shaped by your situation and the thoughts and ideas around you.
Yeah.
But that being a historic thing that is so inbuilt into society that there's not getting any away from it, at this stage. And despite however much people will, cry and moan, it's going to take centuries for you to really see like a major sort of change in that people's perceptions and stuff, which is an interesting idea in itself. If we were to go back in time and have a conversation with someone like 2 centuries ago, would we be able to actually relate and be able to engage them? We'd even struggle with the language changes. Do you know what I mean? Amongst other things.
And that's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because it's like, what is timeless and what is conventional norm of the time?
Yeah.
So if we had a time machine and every week we invited someone from a different era, what would we connect with?
Yeah.
And what would we just be in completely different like stratospheres over?
Yeah.
And just while we're on that little bit of a tangent, podcast guests from anywhere in history, go.
Oh dear, from anywhere in history. So there's quite a few, to be honest with you.
If you say Shakespeare, I swear I'm leaving.
Yeah, fuck off.
Fuck off, Shakespeare. I think the second time we've told Shakespeare to fuck off.
Yeah, seriously, go do one, Shakespeare, honestly. I would rather talk to Christopher Marlowe. I was like, was Shakespeare a dick? Was he really? Was he? That sort of thing. Oh, so, I mean, wouldn't it be interesting? Like, so what you're saying is, okay, so there is a time machine.
Yes.
And I can basically, what do I do? Just put someone's name in, a famous person's name in?
Yeah, and then through they don't have willpower, so they have to be at the podcast. They're briefed enough that this isn't going to scare them.
Okay.
And we have them for an hour.
Well, I am able to give us the highest rated podcast episode ever. Okay.
Go
if this works out, okay. So here's my high stuff planned, okay. So I input a name into this machine.
Did you say heist?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, where's this going?
It's archetypal, isn't it? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're
anyway.
the villain in every story.
So look, I mean, people have been wondering, like, the origins of Jesus and whether or not that was true or not. Get him in there. He's a historical figure.
And
you know what I mean?
You can go, do I look similar? And then...
Well, I can ask him other things like, did God really talk to you? Or, you could go further back, couldn't you? You could get fucking Noah. It's like, tell us about the ark.
How did you build it?
Ark. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know.
So he didn't speak English, but then
he was Italian. Yeah.
Then your knowledge ran out, and suddenly he could communicate with us.
Yeah. I mean, look. I can't speak any Hebrew, so like I went for Italian.
Okay.
But yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting if you could solve some of the world's quandaries with that, rather than going, oh yeah, like Thomas Edison. Like, yeah. Fuck off.
But again, going back to this idea of cultural norms, how would that even play out, right? Like what would be the common ground there?
Yeah.
What would be universal? When we discuss these, if we had people even from different generations, right? Because we joked earlier, I can't remember if this was on air or not, but we joked earlier about being because you're born in the 80s and I'm born in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Like worlds apart, right?
Yeah.
But even if we had someone a lot younger than us and someone on the other seat a lot older, I bet there'd be different discourse there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we are now going to move forward now. We're going to look at some of these other elements of archetypal anima and animus elements, yeah? Really focusing on the idea of duality, okay? So, in Greek mythology and Hindu mythology and Norse mythology, you have these more androgynous characters, okay? Some are not necessarily have that idea of duality weaved within their stories, but then some really do. So, for example, the idea of Loki, a shapeshifter, frequently changed his gender role, okay? Then there is, in Native American traditions, two-spirit people and revered revered as possessing the strengths of both genders. You know, in Egyptian mythology, you had Isis and Osiris, who represented life and death, fertility and power, blended responsibilities. Yeah, but they are specifically gendered there. Alongside this as well, I think another one that I'd like to really sort of focus on is the idea of Ardhana Rishvara. I'll say that again. Ardhana Rishvara, which is a Hindu deity who basically combined Shiva and Parvati.
Okay.
Now, you saw Dragon Ball Z, right? Everything like that.
Every episode.
Yeah. So Shiva and Parvati basically just did the fusion.
Well,
thing.
did they do fusion dance or did they do the Potera earrings?
Well, yeah, maybe they did a bit both because it looks a bit Hindu, doesn't it? The whole thing looks a bit Hindu, doesn't it?
Can they separate themselves?
I would assume so.
Then they did the fusion dance.
So the tales of this god came through a number of different myths, but essentially, you know, the name means the Lord who is half woman. Okay.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
As if that's some sort of superpower. It's like the Lord, the man, the Lord, who is half woman. I think that's what you're getting.
Of femininity.
Yeah. But like the femininity still is like the second element in that sentence, which is a bit annoying. But anyway, it's a composite deity combining Shiva, the destroyer of evil, and Parvati, the feminine nurturing energy. Yeah, it's like like Apollo or like Mars. Yeah, it's like Mars, the god of war, or the Greek equivalent or Ares, the god of war, combines with Aphrodite to make the like final
Super being,
form. Yeah. But yeah, when it comes to symbolism and things like that, they symbolize the inseparable nature of masculine and feminine energies in the universe. And the left half, Parvati, represents fertility and creation and nurturing, while the right half, the Shiva, embodies strength, logic, and aestheticism, which is the renunciation of worldly pleasures, which I hate that. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do your life as like an asceticism, whatever it's called? Like, it's not the way to go.
You've got a really solid platform there, the energy of the universe. Can't use it. Worldly pleasure.
Yeah, so we've got this idea that we have these mythological like ideas that kind of permeate into modern society and give people a reason to like pursue like gender in a different way and stuff like that. It's quite interesting. I've got another one here. So, for example, the Bugis people of Indonesia recognised 5 genders.
5?
Okay? So this is something that is endemic with their culture, and it's something that is really well established over like hundreds and thousands of years. All right. So 5 genders. So you've got men and women, obviously. Then you've got Kalabai, which is a feminine man, and Kalalai, which is a masculine woman, and Bisu, which is gender transcendent. Okay. And like when you think of like when you see people, whether or not they are identifying that or not, you kind of see that, don't you? So it's fair that they've been able to just go, well, that's that, and that's that, and that's that. You're one of them, aren't you? Yeah. That sort of thing. And I quite like that. You know,
we like to categorize things, don't we?
Yeah. And like the Bisu, the gender transcendent, they were actually placed in positions of like high power. They became high priests and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of reminds me of the idea of like a eunuch, like later on in like in like Greek society and other such things like that, where you had people in those priestly situations, but they had no taliwaka, or they had something at least cut off. I can't remember what it is.
Isn't it interesting that when we talk about positions of power and being kind of gender neutral, as it were, that quite often this idea of not having worldly pleasures and not having the sexual component is prominent?
I think like one of the advantages of having that is the idea that you'll be able to relate or have people relate to you, whatever gender they are. You know, you're an everyman or every bisu.
You're an every.
Yeah. It's like you're an omni person. You know, available to access for everyone. You know, for like guidance and like love, etc. You know, so yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, that's something that I kind of feel like it's a shame that you have these cultures and things that are then colonized by Victorian era Western norms, essentially, and they then take precedent, and alongside that, obviously, you've got that colonialization and stuff like that. But then I think around that time, or even before that, well before that, in fact, you've got the idea of like Christianity and Christianity's reach, and that would then also have an impact on these sort of like what you would end up calling pagan ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that's then represented really well in men. You have the church scenes and you have the grotesque, the green man face and the woman who's spreading her.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's all good.
Is that how we censor now? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Just so I know going forward. So
I'm
if I'm going to drop
stick
an F-bomb,
this
I go,
in your...
boo. We'll have code words for him, so you know what I mean.
Yeah. One other thing that we're not really talking about at this point in time is the quite obvious one of the yin and yang.
Yes.
In Taoism, and it's essentially the balance that both bring, and you see that in languages as well. There's like in like Latin language, you have the masculine and you have the feminine, and some words are masculine, some words are feminine, but they all make up, that language, that whole thing,
I mean, how many stories and films play on this idea of once you lose like a biological female, or you lose a biological male, and society rapidly either goes wrong or can't continue to exist.
Yeah.
We need both.
Yeah.
We need this idea of duality to be able to function from a procreation level, but also from a societal level. You need people to be able to function in different ways. And this idea of like 5 genders just allows us more scope to be able to place people in the right positions, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. So like yin and yang, or yin and yang. I always want to say yin and yang.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, but essentially it's quite similar to the other things that we've kind of like looked at here. But it's a nice way of just sort of categorizing things. Oh, that's yin. Oh, that's yang. Oh, that's yin as well. And that sort of thing.
And that's yin and yang.
And yeah, so like one thing that kind of like comes forward in a lot of mythology in relation to the yin side of life. Always look. Anyway, sorry.
The yin side of life.
Thank you. So is the moon.
Yes.
As something that's very feminine, and like
because it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And we as I guess a patriarchal Western society, that is the pinnacle of beauty, is the pinnacle of everything.
Yeah. I mean, but also, there's a lot of like moon-related goddesses and things like that. I think Ishtar comes to mind, who I believe is Babylonian or something like that is represented by the moon, And like, when you think also of like ladies' time of the month and that sort of thing, like that's
a bad topic now.
that's a moon-related thing, isn't it? Isn't it like, or the like the moon goes through a cycle, doesn't it? And is that then attached to a lady's times, etc.?
I can see that.
It might be. It might be.
It's not something I've ever made the connection of, but now,
well, you care
I'm
about
gonna
your
go
wife
home
and that.
and
Like,
go to my wife, "You're basically a werewolf."
Yeah. You should. I should probably like research that like some more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Put a disclaimer in, like, "Do not go home and call your wife a werewolf."
So yeah, do you have anything else you want to add? We're coming to the end now.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, you mentioned quite a lot of societies. I just want to go over the idea of two-spirit, because I think it's really interesting. And it's actually interesting how it's quite prominent in media at the moment.
Yeah.
And when I was like looking into this, it's two-spirit is more modern than people actually consider it. So it's a rebranding of the old form.
Okay,
So
but is this? I mentioned the idea of two spirits through like Native American traditions.
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
So it's a Native American term. but it's
Okay.
actually a retranslation of a term.
Yeah.
So it's not the original kind of meaning and connotation of it. So the two-spirit is what Native Americans are currently using
Yeah.
to classify this.
Okay.
But the concept is very similar. This idea that you have the strength of a male and the strengths of a female kind of together, and like the other societies, they were quite often given quite prevalence within. It was a desirable role.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were some tribes, however, that did not see it like this. So there was some discourse. There is some evidence to suggest that this wasn't global, and it was certain native tribes.
Yeah.
Which is why you might speak to some Native Americans and they go, no, this is not accurate. And then
Yeah.
others are like, absolutely, this is what happened within our tribes.
Cool.
So it's not global,
Yeah.
but it is being used by the Native Americans of today to kind of classify what happened in some of their cultures. And I just thought that was really interesting.
And what sort of impact does that have on like a modern like culture? Is there anything that you were able to like find on that, like with these Native Americans?
So I watched a documentary about kind of like transgender in current kind of forms, and it was by Jonathan Van. Oh, he's in Queer Eye. He's the guy with the long hair.
Okay.
And he got loads of people from the transgender community, and there was one that was from the Native American community who was seen as a two-spirit, and it was really interesting because he was like, they were like. They very much were accepted by the community because it was an older idea and an older form. And again, coming back to this idea that the West is kind of behind with this.
Yeah.
And the West is very good at pushing like an idea like this is a new thing.
Yeah.
This is a new thing because it's new to us.
Yeah.
But actually, the rest of the world has grappled with this idea of we don't all fit this conformed, prescriptive male and female boxes. And actually, is it sometimes good to do that?
Yeah.
Sometimes some people just function. This idea of gender kind of transformity.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to allow someone to be their authentic self and lay into their strengths rather than trying to conform.
Well, it's interesting, like the sort of comparisons you can make, because like you're talking about this idea of the West, the West having to like catch up and stuff. And we talked a couple of episodes ago about the idea of in some countries you have people who are hearing voices and stuff like that, and they're not necessarily hearing like evil intentions and things like that. It's not something that they're scared of, and they're not being told to do harm.
Yeah.
Whereas in Western society, you generally tend to have that happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wonder what's actually happened with Western culture, like from the very get-go, that's given us just all of this sort of negative shit. This idea of like, that like patriarchal like oppression and other things like that, and how people just generally, how their subconscious works, that would cause this sort of like difference compared to like other like nations when you're going through a schizophrenic episode or something like that. It's very odd. Like it's almost like the devil when he was cast down to earth has gone into Europe and that sort of area.
That's where I'm gonna spread my
yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting, and like this subject is also so like full, and there's so much to actually talk about. I've got so much here that I end up having to leave perhaps for another episode. Our old friend Plato, who will no doubt come up in a number of different things, would essentially also talk about this idea of male and females being like a duality and the same, and like two parts of a whole. Plato actually described early humans as round, four-legged with two faces, male, female, or male, female. Which is interesting because in a way, doesn't that kind of match the idea of like XY chromosomes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it's kind of interesting how, like, what is he actually describing there? Is he having some sort of fever dream where like he's taken some sort of crazy drug and then like the secrets of the universe are unlocked to him,
Yeah.
and how he sees like the idea of DNA is just like, you know, well, we were four-legged creatures with
Yeah.
two faces. How interesting is that?
And when you look at the splits of chromosomes, it almost looks like that, right? Two things forcing themselves out, an elongated thing. So I can see that.
Yeah, and you know, so he also talks about the idea that Zeus actually split them in two, creating modern humans who wander the earth searching for their lost half.
Hedwig the Angry Inch starts like that.
Really?
The film is that.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
We should maybe watch the first kind of like 10 minutes.
Well, actually, I think would be a good idea for us when we eventually come back to this subject. It will most probably be at the end of like a viewing of Hedwig. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, we'll definitely incorporate that in. Okay, so look, I mean, like we could carry on. I did actually like write down a couple of silly facts that I found online. I just wanted
Okay.
to know if you had some thoughts on this. Okay, men are more prone to gossiping and chatting with their friends compared to women.
Interesting.
Yeah, because that
Interesting.
breaks the societal norm, doesn't it?
Yeah. But also, I think that's true.
You think that's true?
I think the forum of gossiping
Yeah.
is different. But men do love a chat. And they do love a little bit of a ribbing.
I mean, you even mentioned the idea that you thought that there was more male podcasters than there were.
Yeah.
So, like, you
That's
know,
right, bub.
I mean, like, you're a massive gossip. Like, I have
Oh,
to
yeah.
shut you up sometimes.
Oh,
You're
love it.
constantly talking.
I'm almost late to every lesson on a Wednesday because we're just like,
Yeah.
bub, 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 bub.
Men who express anger are more likely to influence their peers, while the opposite is true of women. Yeah?
I can see that though.
Yeah. So I don't know what that's exactly saying. Like, men who express anger are more likely to influence other men, whereas women, if they are angry, they're less likely to influence other women. Yeah? Interesting one. But either way, I think, so say, for example, the idea of a female comedian, okay?
Yeah.
There has been some scientific study, etc., on the appreciation of female comedy over male comedy, and it's more likely for both genders to appreciate a male comedian than it is a female comedian.
Yeah.
It's a shame that I don't have this information in front of me because it's just an afterthought. It's something I heard a long time ago, and maybe it's been poo-pooed, etc. But it's definitely something that you can kind of see. And what's interesting as well is that there tends to be like a stereotypical female comedian as well.
Oh, absolutely.
That is kind of like crass and
Yeah.
like, well, I got my period today.
Because it goes against conventional norm, right?
Yeah,
And that's why
yeah.
it's funny, because you don't expect a woman to say these things.
But we've had it for so long that we tend to expect it, and then it's
Yeah.
refreshing to have a female comedian that doesn't resort to
absolutely.
just talking about their pussy or something.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I
the
mean
way you
cat.
emphasise pussy.
Oh no,
gave
I
me
meant
the ick.
cat. I meant talking about their cat.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
Yeah.
common trope within.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah. Anyway, okay. So those are a couple of points. We're wrapping up now. What is
We're
the
gonna
next?
we're gonna sing us away.
Sorry.
Shall I? It's been very musical. Shall I sing the next film?
Yeah, sing
You
away.
ready? Sam Hill goes to Frogtown. Sam Hell.
We're always
Sam
getting that wrong.
Hell.
Yes.
Actually, it's Hell goes to Frogtown, isn't
It is.
it?
It
But
is.
we put
the
Sam
character
in there.
is Sam Hell, and he's going to Frogtown. So it's Hell
Yeah.
goes to Frogtown. And I'm going to tell you this in advance, everyone. Not that anyone's listening at this point in time, before this comes out. But we are going to be watching a film that's hard to get in a mainstream sort of forum, but the whole film is streaming on YouTube at the
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
Like, hopefully, you know, it won't be taken down by the
Yep.
time you get to watch it. But it's a rip-roaring feast, to be honest with you. And the reason we're looking at it is because it's got that similar sort of like element of duality going on. Sam Hell is a man, the last fertile man in a post-apocalyptic world that is, you know, ruled by a matriarchy.
Oh, and we love a bit of connectivity here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's going to lead on very nicely to an episode where we talk about frogs.
Oh, yeah.
There
I've
we
been
go.
waiting for the frog episode.
Yeah, because we all love frogs. Okay, until next time, it has been a pleasure speaking to you, and we'll see you again sometime soon.
You directly, Simon.
Who the fuck is it? Oh, yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
just...
Simon Bellingham of 52
Someone's
Adart
been made
Street.
very happy by that.
Yeah.
See you later.
See you later.